Thank you so much for that introduction. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. First, I'd like to thank Strive UK and Mab, of course, and all the sisters that are involved in organising this event and for inviting me here today. A lot of you don't know, but I actually grew up in Birmingham, so I'm always happy to be back. And yeah, this place has a really special place in my heart, so thank you so much. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it from you all, particularly in this time where there's so many challenges and so many difficulties. And may this be a means for all of you, inshallah, to enter Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. So the theme of sisterhood, which brings us here today, to share the tales and of resilience, strength, adversity holds immense significance in these turbulent times. We find ourselves amidst a dark period where societal morals and values seem to be forsaken. We witness atrocities unfolding before our very eyes, with the world turning a blind eye to acts of genocide. We see world leaders not only fail to act, but also contribute to the perpetration of violence by offering support to entities like Israel and fueling the horrors unfolding in Gaza today. It's a time that diminishes the importance of community and collective action because it recognizes the transformative power it holds. And this is why it's really important for us to come together and to hold onto that community and that sisterhood that we have. It's moments like these that we are reminded of the profound lessons imparted by the resilient people of Palestine and Gaza in particular. They urge us to reconnect with our Islamic roots, to reawaken our consciousness of Islamic principles, and they demonstrate the vital importance of solidarity, urging us to stand united, to look out for one another, and to extend care and support, and to be willing, most importantly, to make sacrifices for the greater good. Sisters, it's been nearly 5 months since the genocide began in Gaza. Muslims around the world have tuned into the most significant global event in decades, and perhaps in our lifetimes. Never before in history has a genocide been broadcast for the world to watch in horror, in real time. And let's be honest, we've all been on a roller coaster of emotions. We're witnessing both the painful destruction of Gaza and the beautiful resilience of its people. Every week, there has been both full heartache and pain and anger and activity. And I want us to think of this activity. Activity in the form of protests, vigils, events, fundraisers, and more. And that's because our hearts and minds are still with the people of Gaza and Palestine. I wanted to start off with some reflections from Surah Al-Buruj, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually addresses a genocide that happened. Surah Al-Buruj talks about the people of the pit, or Ashab al-Ukhdud, when a community of believers who lived before Islam, they were said to be Unitarian Christians. They were faced by ruthless and tyrannical enemies who sought to force them away from their faith. The believers refused, and therefore they were burnt to death in front of large crowds that had gathered to witness this act of extermination. Surah Al-Buruj starts off in the second verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ, and the promised day of judgment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He takes an oath by the day of judgment. This is the day that all oppressors, tyrants, and murderers are brought to justice. This is the day where the weak, where the oppressed and the innocent have their retribution and their justice served not by a temporary king or a temporary authority or the ICJ or the ICC, but by the Lord of the worlds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the master of all that exists. This day of judgment is a warning to the oppressors and a source of hope for the oppressed. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he goes on to say, وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ, and the witness and what is witnessed. Now, I want us to think about this, and subhanAllah, it's really beautiful, because oppressors, just like we see today in Gaza, they usually try to attempt to conceal their crimes from the eyes of humanity, in fear of being exposed and brought to justice. We see this right now happening in Gaza, where electricity has been cut off, where reporters and journalists have been killed. And despite such efforts, despite this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he bears witness to every single act of injustice that has occurred on this planet. No justice, no injustice, no act of injustice can be hidden from him. You and I are witnesses. We witness every single day the atrocities that are being committed in Gaza. We see it every day on social media. This is our form of witness. The Ummah as a whole is a witness, and we will be asked about this on the Day of Judgment. Our bodies are witnesses. The angels are witnesses. Each and every single one of us, we are assigned to each individually we are assigned angels that record our deeds. They will be witnesses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the witness. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he goes on to talk about Ashab al-Ukhdud, where he says, قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ, cursed were the makers of the pit of fire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he curses a group of people referred to as the companions of the trench. These are the people who committed a genocide against a group of believers. There is a hadith which details this story in summary. In summary, it's of a young boy who was guided by another believer and who therefore defied the ruler and his magician who taught him the magic. And this young boy started to preach justice. Though the king, he killed this monk or this elder who guided the little boy to truth, the king wasn't able to kill the little boy. And he tried so many times to kill this little boy, but every single time he would fail. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he also gave this boy a lot of miracles to prove his truthfulness. One miracle was that he couldn't be killed by anyone unless it was a public execution where the words "in the name of the Lord" of the boy were to be recited. So the king, he gathered the people together to show this boy's end. And the king said, "In the name of the Lord of the boy," and then shot an arrow at the boy, and therefore killing him. The people around were amazed by this and by the sacrifice of this little boy and what they had witnessed. And the king, who claimed to be a god, called on the Lord of the boy to kill him, acknowledging that there is a greater authority than him. And therefore the people around started to realize that actually this king was a fake god, and this boy, he sacrificed himself to invite people to worship the one and true Lord. And in doing so, the people started to become believers and went against the king, in an act unexpected. So what happened was, after the king became very angry, how dare these people defy me and believe in God, and how dare they disbelieve in me? The king became angry, and therefore he decided to commit a massacre. And what he did, he ordered all his men to dig a pit or a ditch on the ground, and he threw all the people into the ditch that believed in Allah, all of them believing men and women and children, and he burnt them alive. And I want us to think about this, because for me this is very similar to what's happening in Gaza today. People are being killed, murdered, women, men, children, in an act of genocide, mass killing, and people are being, for no reason, apart from the fact that they are Palestinian and they are from Gaza. These criminals placed the believers in a ditch, filled with fire, and it's fire that is possessive of fuel. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say, النار ذات الوقود, He's talking about this fire. The word waqud means to kindle. So the fire was kindled with fuel to keep the flames alight. And this might be very difficult to sort of picture, but try to picture it. This fire was so huge, it was very difficult to extinguish it. It was just kept alight. The same people who are destroying these believers in a ditch of fire, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy in the fire of hell. They will become the fuel for that fire, and thus their crime of setting people alight to fuel will be their ultimate fate in the next life. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He goes on to say, إِذْ هُمْ عَلَيْهَا قُعُودٌ, when they sat by it, meaning this fire. It's narrated that the last of those to enter the fire was a mother with her baby. When she was reluctant to enter the fire with her baby, the baby was given the ability to speak and told her that she was upon the truth, and so she jumped in. It typically takes two types of soldiers to carry out brutal crimes like these. The first type is a reluctant soldier. He would rather not, but he has to follow orders out of fear. The second soldier enjoys perpetrating this act. In this verse, we learn that the latter are the worst and cruelest kinds of people. The word julus in Arabic means to sit for a short while, whereas qu'ud, which is what is mentioned in this ayah, means to sit for a long period of time. At the very brink of the ditch, they would find themselves a seat and watch these people being forced into the fire and set alight. Now, I want to take you back to what's happening today. And it's directly linked to what's happening in Palestine and in Gaza. Just like the king, the Zionist regime established itself on the basis of falsehood. And just like the king, the regime could only respond to any threat of its false ideology with massacres and genocide. Yet, when the king did kill the boy, he did not kill his cause. On the contrary, the truthfulness of the boy's message and the falsehood of the king's ideology became manifested to the masses. Today, the genocide conducted by the Zionist state against the Palestinians have exposed hypocrisy of the regime and its supporters. Despite all the propaganda, the ugly face of settler colonialism and violent truth of Zionism has been unveiled to the world. At the same time, the faith and resilience of the Palestinians in the face of extreme oppression has inspired millions of people globally. And subhanAllah, you can see this, the amount of people that have actually entered Islam after seeing what happened in Gaza, and because of the patience and resilience that the people of Gaza have shown. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He goes on to say, وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ, and they witness what they were doing against the believers. The word amal is to perform an action with intention, like reading a book. Whereas fa'al, which is what is mentioned in this ayah, وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ, the word fa'al is to perform an action without thinking, such as blinking your eyes. You just do it naturally. By using the word يَفْعَلُونَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He informs us that these people did not even think twice about what they were doing and the evil that they were committing on the believers. The oppressors would be witnesses against their own actions, and this is something that we also need to bear in mind. Now, the IDF has several telegram groups. They publicize, they take pictures, they take videos, and they mock the killing and humiliation of Palestinians, as though these atrocities are a form of entertainment. Nor is this the first time that Israelis have indulged in such casual dehumanization of Palestinians. For an example, in 2014, when Israel was bombing Gaza, some Israeli citizens literally brought their couches and their tables and the chairs on a hillside on the border with Gaza, and they were cheering the destruction of Gaza from afar. As the Israelis watch their state slaughter the defenseless and innocent people of Gaza, we watched what could only be described as a modern incarnation of the people of the trench. Exactly what the people of the trench did. They watched and they were looking at all these innocent people being burnt to death. This is exactly what the Israelis have been doing, and they were cheering it on. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He goes on to say, وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. And they resented them, not except because they believed in Allah, the exalted in might, the praiseworthy. الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. To whom belongs a domination, kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and Allah is witness over everything. Oppressors always justify their oppression by dehumanizing people, and they do this whilst they claim to be great. Every corrupt empire, every corrupt kingdom, every corrupt government has stupidly deluded themselves into believing that their rule is uniquely powerful, great and civilized. We are the uncivilized people. Every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He humiliates them and relegates them to the dustbin of history. The reality is that all that is in the heavens and the earth belongs to Allah only. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إن الذين فتنوا المؤمنين والمؤمنات ثم لم يتوبوا فلهم عذاب جهنم ولهم عذاب الحريق. Indeed, those who have tortured the believing men and believing women and have not repented will have the punishment of hell, and they will have the punishment of the burning fire. It's important to understand that the suffering endured by believers in this life is not a sign of failure. The righteous will attain paradise in the next life. This is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their status will be elevated in accordance with whatever they suffered with this life. No matter the pain we feel at their unjust murder, the martyrs of Gaza's genocide and the martyrs throughout the ages are in a far better place in the next life. This ayah gives me a sense of relief. Allah is so merciful. He is so merciful, even through His punishment. When you see people go through oppression, you feel sorry for them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them the greatest gift of all by removing doubt and calling them mu'minun. Now we know there are different levels of Muslims. There is a Muslim, there is a mu'min. There are mu'minun, they are true believers. And in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He specifically mentioned the believing women as well. And women are mentioned separately to the men here, as when a group is oppressed, the easiest of the oppressed are women. And so this has been highlighted to inform us that even they come under the scrutiny of oppression and remain firm. Sisters, I'm sure you can all agree with me that the people of Gaza have become a living miracle. Their will to survive, and not only survive, but to persist and resist, has sent shockwaves around the world. It's awakened not only the Muslim masses, but given a hope to humanity itself. Hope for a new world. It has become evident, has come not from, and this has become evident, not from the shining capitals, not from London or Washington, or not from the technological feats or the trillion-dollar schemes, but from the rubble of Gaza. The hope has come from the rubble of Gaza. And how could this be? And I think it's really important for us to take some time and reflect on this. Seeing the determination and the strength of the people of Gaza, the ummah across the world is awakening. But not just Muslims or Arabs. Humanity at large has not sung songs of love and joined hands like it has for Palestine, despite the greatest machinery of deception and propaganda that history has ever seen. The entire formerly colonized world and the young generations and the dispossessed masses of even the colonizers have found their faith in humanity. And that is why, subhanAllah, when you go to these protests, majority of them aren't Muslims. Majority of the people attending these protests are your normal white British person. And subhanAllah, that's saying something. So I don't want us to forget this moment. Let's record this glimpse of, this glimpse of hope. And it's something that we should hold on to and never forget. Now, I know the theme is sisterhood, and I wanted to talk about this a bit as well. And this concept of sisterhood that we have in Islam goes far beyond familial bonds. It encompasses a profound sense of solidarity and mutual support amongst all believers. And the Quran reminds us of our duty to stand against injustice, irrespective of race, of religion or nationality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he declares in Surah An-Nisa in ayah 135, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين. O you who have believed, be persistent, standing firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves or parents and relatives. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he goes on to say in the same ayah, whether one is rich or poor, Allah is more worthy of both. God can take care of both. Refrain from following your own desires so that you can act justly. If you distort or neglect justice, God is fully aware of what you do. And therefore, sisters, advocating for Palestine or advocating for justice in Palestine is not merely a political stance. It's a moral obligation upon each and every single one of us, and it's rooted in our faith. The Palestinian people have endured decades of occupation, of oppression and displacement. Yet their resilience and steadfastness serve as a beacon of hope for oppressed communities worldwide. And the concept of justice is rooted in Allah's divine nature. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again in Surah An-Nisa, in ayah 40, he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. Verily, Allah does not do an atom, even an atom, ways of injustice. Now, think about that. Nothing will go unnoticed. And as sisters bound by the teachings of Islam, it's therefore a duty upon us to amplify the voices of Palestinian people and to advocate for their right to self-determination and to condemn the systemic injustice perpetrated against them. We can't turn a blind eye to the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Their struggle is our struggle, and their pain is our pain. And subhanAllah, I think we all know the ayah that if you see something wrong, change it by your hand, if not, by your tongue, and if not, then with your heart, and that's the lowest form of iman. And we also all know the hadith of that we are, the Muslim ummah is like one body, and if a part of that body aches, then the entire body aches. But I feel like the past few months, I've really, really, truly understood those hadith. I've never felt it the way I felt it since October. And it really gave a new meaning to it, because I've never seen the unity that I have seen ever since October, subhanAllah. I know that sometimes it might be easier to just turn a blind eye. I know that sometimes it can be, the pain is too much and it can be overwhelming. But remember that the Palestinian people have shown remarkable resilience in the face of unimaginable hardships. And it must inspire each and every single one of us to persevere, to continue our advocacy with renewed vigor and determination. And I also want us to reflect a bit on the gendered nature of this war as well. As women in this room, I hope you'd agree with me that when I say that there is an extra layer of harshness and difficulty and cruelty that Palestinian women in particular go through. Now, just a few statistics, and they're not just statistics. This is actually real life, and this is happening. But just to put things into perspective, 2 mothers are killed every hour in Gaza. And approximately over 3,000 women have become widowed. And approximately 1 million women and girls have been displaced. There are over 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza. And 40% of those pregnancies have been classed as high-risk pregnancies. And 180 women are given birth on a daily basis without the support that they need. And this is it's a bit difficult to really imagine, because we have been privileged, alhamdulillah, with an NHS, with the support that we need, with the community that we need. We don't have bombs flying over our head. And sometimes it's very difficult, and we take advantage of these things, but these are things that our sisters are going through every single day in Gaza. Everyday women essentials. They don't have access to sanitary pads, and women are having to cut strips from their tents so they could use as pads. And I remember when I first saw this, I was like, it just never really crossed my mind, because I was thinking to myself, what do you mean you don't have pads? Like, you need, like, it's something that every woman has and deserves to have, and it's something that we use every single day that you don't really think about. But this is a reality of our sisters in Gaza. I've seen mothers tweeting that they have now started to give their daughters menstruation delaying pills because of the cramps and the pain, and because they don't have access to these essentials that we do. And again, these aren't statistics, or these aren't just stories. This is a reality of our sisters in Gaza today. We're so privileged. We are so privileged. And the idea that someone can't have access to something so essential just went above my head. But I want us to think about this when we are campaigning and advocating for Palestine. And sisters, we must resist the temptation to grow weary, to become desensitized to the suffering of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. I know it's been 5 months, and sometimes it can feel, okay, it's a bit long now, but we can't become desensitized. We can't get used to the images that we are seeing every day. It can't just be another story or another image. We need to feel the same anger and disgust that we felt from day one. Now, I currently work for a Palestinian NGO, and when I tell you the first few weeks and months in particular have been extremely, extremely difficult. My job is to literally watch what's happening every single day and to lobby politicians on behalf of Palestine. The images I was seeing coming out of Gaza, and on top of that, the way our politicians simply didn't care, made me feel depressed. It was very difficult. And I went through a period of breakdowns. I struggled to eat, I struggled to sleep, I struggled to do anything, because how on earth can we allow this to happen? And how on earth can our politicians not care about this? For a period, I felt like I was becoming paralyzed. And we are human beings. We're not immune to such feelings of this helplessness and vulnerability. But within the darkness, I realized that I had a responsibility and I had a greater purpose. And this made me overcome those struggles. And I only say this because I know I've had these conversations with others where people just feel helpless and they don't know what to do. And that sense of helplessness and that sense of, well, what can I do, is from Shaitan. So this is just to overcome this. I reminded myself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He placed me in this role at this time for a particular reason. And therefore it was my duty, it was my literal Islamic duty to raise awareness and to advocate tirelessly and to confront the injustices perpetrated. It was my duty. And if politicians didn't care, that's my jihad. So I had to shift my perspective and mindset swiftly. So if any of you are feeling like this, try and shift your perspective and try and shift your mindset. And recognize that this struggle is not just mine or yours alone. It's a collective effort. And it's a testament to our shared humanity and commitment to justice. And despite the challenges that some of us might go through, we need to draw strength from the resilience that our Palestinian brothers and sisters are showing every single day, who continue to resist and persist in the face of unimaginable adversity. Despite everything we've seen in Gaza, people laugh, people sing, people are getting married, we are seeing pictures, and this in itself is a form of resistance. They are laughing despite the bombing. Kids are playing, when it's raining, they're out in the streets and playing despite the killing. They're getting married despite everything. And this in itself should give us that power and that strength that we need. I have a lot of Palestinian friends, and I actually remember in October, one of my closest friends was getting married. And just, subhanAllah, it was just a week after the 7th of October. And she was like, should I cancel it? Like, you know, there's a war happening. I don't know if I should cancel it. I don't want to be insensitive. And our Palestinian friend, she said, her name is Ruqayya. She said, Ruqayya, go ahead. Because as Palestinians, she's from Gaza, and she has family who died as well, who are martyred. She said, we love life. As Palestinians, we love life. And therefore, don't stop. And I say these words because Palestinians, they want to live. They want to live like we live. And therefore, we need to work so they can live. It's important as well that we make a distinction between being sad and feeling emotional from the images that we're seeing and falling into despair. There's a difference. We need to feel sad. We need to feel angry. We need to cry. And we need to reflect. And it's only human of us to do so. But falling into despair is to give up. And as Muslims, we can't give up. That's something that we can't do. Yet there are moments of weaknesses, moments where the weight of the world feels too heavy to bear. And we know that oppressors, they want to crush our spirits and they want to crush our souls. That's the reason why they always choose to storm Masjid al-Aqsa in the last 10 days of Ramadan. There is a reason for that. That's the reason, and it's always the last 10 days of Ramadan, some of the holiest nights of the year and one of the holiest places or sites in Islam. And I mention this now because Ramadan is around the corner and we're all expecting another wave of attacks and storming Masjid al-Aqsa. So that is something for us to be aware of. And there is also a reason why on the day of Eid, when children are supposed to wake up to celebrate with their parents, the people of Gaza, sometimes they wake up, sometimes they don't wake up. There's something very cruel about that. And the reason they do that, the Israelis do that, is because they want to crush our spirit. But in those moments, I want us to find peace and tranquility in knowing that you are part of a global community of advocates. You're part of this ummah. This is where the importance of community and working in a jama'ah becomes paramount. One of the most powerful tools of our disposal at the moment in advocating for Gaza and Palestine is the power of community. In Islam, we're taught that we are stronger together. The concept of one ummah reminds us that we are part of a larger community, bound by our shared faith and values. Working in a jama'ah or community, it allows us to pool our talents, our resources, and expertise to tackle different issues and problems that we face from multiple angles. Whether it's organizing protests and demonstrations, or lobbying policymakers, or raising funds for humanitarian aid, or raising awareness through social media campaigns, there is a role for each and every single one of us. And we play a part in that collective effort to advocate for Palestine. But advocating for Palestine is not just the work that we do externally. It's also about nourishing our souls and sustaining our spirits. And I'm going to conclude with this, inshallah, but this is very important. This is where the importance of prayer, particularly the night prayers of tahajjud and qiyam, comes into play. One advice that I got from my mentor when I started university activism and became heavily involved in particularly Palestine activism was to never abandon my qiyam. That was something I encouraged people in my team and everyone around me to maintain, because I promise you that will give you the strength that you need to face everything that you're going to face. The spiritual strength that qiyam and tahajjud, particularly qiyam, it gives you, is something that you need to advocate for Palestine, and without it, you will struggle. We will all struggle. So I want to end on this note, inshallah. And it's, of course, it's a reminder to myself before anyone, of course, to please do your best to maintain your qiyam. I promise you it will fuel you and give you the strength and clarity you need to continue in your advocacy with steadfastness and determination. Barakallahu fikum. Thank you.